Preserving chicken without a refrigerator is something many people associate with survivalists or off-the-grid living. But for the Amish, it's just another part of everyday life. With a treasure trove of time-honored techniques passed down through generations, they've mastered the art of keeping poultry fresh in ways that might surprise you. In a world that has been engulfed by the most modern amenities, the Amish take food preservation in a most inspiring way of creativity and resourcefulness. Read along with us as we look into these wonderful methods, glimpsing into a life of simplicity and sustainability. The ground, nature's refrigerator. Ever thought of interring a dinner? Sounds nuts, right? For the Amish, freezing chicken underground is not only practical, but remarkably effective. No chirping fridge sitting in the corner, no worries about freezer burn, just plain old dirt and a bit of ingenuity. The earth has been man's cooler long before this electricity, and to the Amish it's about a secret pantry that's always set at the ideal temperature. No bills, no maintenance, just tucking your food in for a long nap. Believe me, there's something incredibly satisfying about digging out a meal you stashed weeks ago, knowing it's been resting beneath your feet all this time. The magic lies in the Earth's ability to maintain a stable temperature. Once you dig deep enough, the ground stays cool regardless of how hot it gets above. Bacteria and mold find it difficult to survive in such consistent coolness, which is necessary for preventing spoilage. If the weather gets too hot, things run amok, but beneath the earth, time stands still. The Amish learned that they do not need a metal box plugged into the wall when Mother Nature has the best solution. Fascinatingly, a storage site underground for food has been used since the beginning of man. Archaeologists found pits that date back more than 12,000 years that were used to store meat. A very long history in believing in the dirt. The packing process. Of course, just any hole won't do. It needs to be deep enough to keep the meat safe, but not so deep that you feel like you are auditioning for a role in The Great Escape. Some Amish families dig root cellars, underground rooms lined with wood or stone that create a cool, dark, and dry environment ideal for slowing down spoilage. If you want to see genius at work, watch how they wrap the chicken. The meat is wrapped tightly in cloth, sometimes with a layer of wax paper, enough to keep dirt out but allow the meat to breathe. I once tried this after hearing a friend rave about it, and digging a hole in my backyard to stash a roast was oddly satisfying. The real challenge came later, remembering where I buried it. One time, I forgot about it for a week longer than planned, worried I would unearth a science experiment. Lucky for me, the meat was as fresh as the day I buried it. There's an incredible sense of relief from not having to monitor a fridge all day, hoping your leftovers will survive another 24 hours. The taste? It is richer and more flavorful, almost as if the earth itself imparted a little seasoning. Interestingly, even the early settlers in America used underground storage for survival in times of really cold winters, when fresh food was scarce. Now, here we are surviving because of electricity. These simple ways remind us that sometimes we find better ways in simple answers rather than complex solutions. And the joy lies in knowing that one can beat time without needing any technology. Smoking chicken is an art. Smoked meat has a funny way of reviving memories. It always brings to mind barbecues, lazy afternoons spent during summer, and that uncle who insists on showing off his grilling at every family gathering. For the Amish, smoking chicken is not just a flavor, but also an essential preservation technique that keeps meat edible for months without refrigeration. This age-old technique has its roots in Native American and settler traditions, who heavily relied on smoking to get through the harshest of winters. Amish, in many ways, kept up the legacy. These chickens are turned into a piece of culinary art and survival. The science behind it is pretty clever. When wood burns, it releases chemicals that impart that special flavor smokiness while serving as a natural preservative. It's as much seasoning as it is keeping the bad bacteria off. The slow drying that occurs during the smoking process reduces the moisture content in the meat. With less moisture, there are fewer opportunities for bacteria to thrive. I always found it amusing that the same process used to create gourmet barbecue is also one of the oldest ways to prevent your dinner from spoiling. The process of smoking. When I started smoking meat on my own, I was sort of chef-scientist caveman. The difficult thing is keeping that fire at just the right temperature. Not too hot, not too cool. Babysitting a toddler who wants to burn the house down might be an easier task. Then there's the whole argument about wood. The Amish tend to like the robust flavors of hardwood such as hickory or oak, though some families have secret wood blends they swear by. One Amish farmer I met quipped, "We'd tell you what wood we use, but then we'd have to smoke you too." It's no wonder smoked chicken lasts for months and tastes better the longer it's allowed to rest. Something magical happens in that waiting period, much like how chili often tastes better the next day. Once the chicken is smoked and put away, it doesn't need any special attention. It's ready when you are, chopped up for soups, sliced for sandwiches, or eaten plain. The flavor is always a delightful surprise. Even if you're not into camping or survival scenarios, having some smoked chicken tucked away feels oddly empowering, as if you've outsmarted modern life at its own game. Canning, the art of preservation. Perhaps when people think of canning, they end up visualizing a jar filled with jelly or pickles, not exactly dinner fare. However, the Amish have perfected the art of stuffing pretty much anything and everything into jars with chicken, as a most notable example. It sounds like something out of a science fiction lab. Airtight seals, sterilization, the annihilation of bacteria, but really it's all quite straightforward once you see it in action. You take fresh chicken, pop it into a jar, and use a pressure canner to seal it up tight, leaving no room for even the tiniest microbe to sneak in. What you're left with is shelf-stable chicken that can last for years, just sitting in the pantry, waiting to be transformed into dinner. The first time I heard someone mention they had chicken in a jar, I thought they were joking. But no, it's a real thing and surprisingly tasty. Opening a jar months or even years after sealing it reveals chicken that's as good as the day it went in. My favorite part of this method is the reactions it gets. Casually dropping into conversation, "Oh yeah, I canned some chicken the other day," will elicit all kinds of looks. It sounds odd until you try it, at which point it becomes one of those tricks you wonder how you ever lived without. Once the jars seal with pressure, the chicken remains in suspended animation, a time-traveling vessel, waiting to explode with all its glory at the right time. The Amish enjoy canning for very practical reasons. You do not have to stress over a loss of power or having your meat spoiled. If tomorrow was the world's last day, those jars will remain, and in them, their chicken and chicken product will await whatever culinary expedition you might want to have. Fermentation, a unique flavor profile. Now here's the twist, fermented chicken. Yeah, that may raise an eyebrow at first, but once you get the hang of it, it makes sense. The Amish didn't stumble upon this method by chance. They recognized that the right kind of bacteria can outcompete the wrong kind. This process is about creating an environment where beneficial microbes thrive, changing the meat with its unique flavors and preserving it. This type of fermentation isn't a hipster foodie fad. It's been used by cultures across the globe for thousands of years. Fermented fish has been a staple in Northern Europe for centuries, and indigenous Arctic peoples have fermented meat and fat to survive brutal winters. The Amish know they're in good company with this method, which is not just about chasing exotic flavors, but about survival. Salt, the ancient preservative. Some preservation techniques just don't date. Rubbing meat with salt is one of those techniques. The process feels nearly archaic in the sense that it actually is. Centuries ago, sailors, traders, and armies turned to salt as a preservation technique to make food not turn to mush overnight. The Amish treat salt as a very important person in their chicken preservation toolkit. Covering the meat in salt brings out a form of magic when it can extract moisture from it. Lesser moisture, therefore, means lesser places where bacteria can hang about and cause trouble. The process itself is oddly satisfying. Take a piece of chicken, rub it generously with salt, and wait. It feels like an exercise in patience, but the result is toughened, flavorful meat that can last far longer than you'd expect from anything left unrefrigerated. When it's time to use the chicken, a quick soak or rinse revives it, turning it surprisingly tender and ready for cooking. Modern techniques. Pressure cooking. Even in the most traditional Amish households, there is room for slightly modern tools like pressure cookers. Though they shy away from electricity, practical solutions ensure that chicken will stay edible for months or even years. A pressure cooker isn't just a fancy pot. It's more like a preservation superhero in disguise. It kills bacteria with heat and high pressure while sealing in the flavors, making chicken that feels like it has been frozen in time but tastes freshly cooked. The Amish enjoy simplicity in their use of these cookers. They are not interested in fashionable kitchen gadgets, but rather solutions that get the job done. It is as if a food time capsule, sealed jar of goodness you open months later, and it tastes like no time has passed. You feel good about knowing that a meal you prepared today could still be waiting for you 10 years down the road. Pin, the old survival device. Ever wonder what a collaboration between jerky and trail mix would result in? It'd be akin to pin, an old food that's just as pragmatic as it is quirky. The Amish would probably not care too much that it's also one of their favorite survival snacks and invention designed to combine jerky, melted lard, and sometimes even some dried berries, so dense they keep even the most vigorous individuals going through long, cold winters. While survivalists and history buffs might focus on pin as relic, it is still relevant for those who want to have food items simple, nutritious, and shelf-stable. One of the Amish main features in making things last through embracing pin's no-nonsense philosophy. High in calories and built to endure, it is more like the old pickup truck, reliable, tough, and always there when you need it. Vinegar, the surprising preservative. You wouldn't think to soak chicken in vinegar as a preservation method, but for the Amish, pickling isn't just a tangy kick. It's a smart, low-maintenance technique that creates an acidic environment, sending bacteria packing and keeping the chicken safe to eat for months. This was a popular method during World War I when soldiers depended on pickled meat to survive the trenches. While the concept of vinegary chicken may raise eyebrows at the dinner table, once you try it, you will appreciate the cleverness and tastiness of this method. If you have ever fished moldy leftovers from the back of the fridge, you will probably treasure the brilliance of having chicken you can pull straight from the brine and eat without fear. Dehydration, a timeless technique. In the case of dehydration, the Amish aren't just making snacks. They're creating food that stands the test of time. Drying chicken to the point of jerky isn't merely about flavor. Though it certainly imparts a delightful taste, it's about stripping away moisture so bacteria can't thrive. Without water, those spoilage-causing microbes wave the white flag and move on. The beauty of dehydration lies in its simplicity. You hang the chicken to dry, sometimes in the sun or near a warm stove, and nature takes care of the rest. There's a satisfaction in knowing you can pack chicken in your bag without worrying about refrigeration. Properly dehydrated chicken isn't just a snack. It's a survival tool that has sustained travelers and soldiers for centuries. The lard method, an age-old technique. Imagine taking your freshly prepared chicken and covering it in a thick coat of lard. It may sound unconventional, but this ancient preservation method, still trusted by the Amish, acts as a protective shield against air and bacteria. Once the chicken is sealed inside this fatty fortress, it can rest safely on a pantry shelf for months without refrigeration. The process is quite simple. Cook the chicken, pack it in tightly, and pour the melted lard over it so that everything gets submerged. The cooling fat sets hard, turning into a tight barrier that shields but also encases the chicken's flavor inside. There is something satisfying about using fat not just as food but as a preservation tool, almost like tricking nature. In a world obsessed with low-fat everything, here's a method that embraces fat to make food last longer. Sour milk preservation. Clever yet delicious. This might come across as more of a failure in the culinary world, but for the Amish, this is a perfect way to make chicken stay fresh while giving a tasty twist to it. As the chicken is submerged in sour milk or buttermilk, with its tangy, acidic character, it ensures that the bacterial action does magic for preservation along with flavor augmentation. The production of lactic acid during the fermentation process does not favor dangerous bacteria and provides a conducive setting for the preservation of chicken safe for consumption longer. Using sour milk as a preservative is not only practical, but also gives the chicken a special flavor. Imagine taking a bite of chicken that tastes fresh and has a creaminess with a pleasant zing. This method is an example of how the Amish incorporate resourcefulness and creativity in preserving food. Freezing in ice. Nature's freezer. Freezing chicken in ice sounds a little unusual, but to the Amish, it's a practical way of preserving it. They do not just view ice as something to chill drinks. They think it is an excellent way to keep chicken fresh for months. In winter, they pack fresh chicken in a container surrounded by ice. This icy cocoon prevents spoilage while locking in flavor. The Amish control the temperature in order for the chicken to remain at a steady cold. If it starts getting warm, they add ice as needed. It will be moister and retain flavor in comparison to the store-bought frozen meats. Brining, the ultimate chicken spa day. Brining chicken is like giving it a cozy bath in a salty solution. And for the Amish, this method is revolutionary. They mix salt with water, sometimes adding sugar or spices, allowing the chicken to soak up flavors and moisture. This enhances not just the taste, but also the preservation quality of the meat. The salt creates an environment where harmful bacteria struggle to survive, keeping the chicken fresh longer. Brining has gained popularity in many kitchens today, making it a must-have technique for family gatherings and feasts. Conclusion. In a world dominated by refrigeration and modern conveniences, the Amish remind us that preserving chicken, and food in general, can be achieved through age-old methods rooted in nature and tradition. Their innovative methods not only ensure freshness, but also reflect a deep respect for the food they consume and the environment they inhabit. By embracing these time-honored practices, we can learn valuable lessons about sustainability, creativity, and the joy of simple living. Whether you're preserving food for pragmatic reasons or merely seeking a reconnection with nature, the Amish have an entire treasure trove of wisdom that's both inspiring and timeless.